Chef Hunt. I'm the director of the Texas Military Forces Museum. I'd like to welcome you to Camp Mabry and to our Close Assault 1968 program. This is an event that we put on every Memorial Day to help remind ourselves of what that holiday is really all about. And we do that by putting a focus on one of the more recent chapters in American military history, and that is the war in Vietnam in the 1960s and the early 1970s. The Texas National Guard, in fact, almost none of the National Guard was mobilized for the war in Vietnam. They remained the reserve force for U.S. Army in Europe in case the Soviets were to cross the inter-German border and start World War III.
Infantry Division. We immediately went out to the field. We were out for about 2 weeks, and then on January the 30th, the Tet Offensive started. Some of you may have read about that or heard about it.
In one Garand, but it loads a 20-round box magazine, just like a DAR would do. The ammunition is 7.62 millimeter or 308 if you prefer. And the one thing that was supposed to be great about this weapon is that it could be fired on full automatic. So like the Browning automatic rifle, this could be a light machine gun. So what you're trying to do is give every infantryman the firepower of the World War II BAR gunner. That did not really work very well for a couple of reasons. So the M16 begins its life in 1960 as the AR-15. That stands for Armalite Rifle. That's the manufacturer. It is a 5.56 millimeter or .223 caliber, if you prefer. It only weighs 7.5 pounds, so it's a pound lighter than the M14. It too loads with a 20-round box magazine, but the ammunition is much lighter. It's also a much shorter weapon, so this is better suited to fighting in a jungle environment. Of course, the fact that they gave us a lighter rifle and lighter ammunition didn't mean that the load that we carried was any lighter, because the way that the Army figures this is, oh, you have a lighter weapon and you have lighter ammo, so we can give you more stuff to carry. Mode in my possession. In World War II. It weighs 24 pounds, so it earned its nickname the Pig, because it was like carrying a big slab of pig iron with you. It fires a 7.62 millimeter cartridge. Those are usually contained in a 100-round dissolving metallic belt. You'll see that the troops who are carrying the gun have that ammunition wrapped around them, because that was more convenient than carrying it in ammo cans. Also, a lot of the other men in the squad would have belts of ammo wrapped around them, because this thing has a sustainable rate of fire of between 550 and 650 rounds a minute. Has a quick have a jam. So these things obviously are designed to fire live ammunition. They much prefer to put bullets down range. The problem, of course, we have is our neighbors don't like us to put bullets down range, and sometimes they shoot back, so we don't do it. American Rifle Company. It is a 40 millimeter breech loading weapon. It can fire a smoke, flechette, illumination, or experience. And in 79, the gunner knew exactly the angle at which to aim his weapon to hit the target that he wants to hit. It takes a lot of ammunition. Round looks like that. This is a practice round. That's why it has the blue on the front of it. To load it, the soldier simply opens the breech, just like that, inserts a round in, closes the breech, he's ready to fire. I'm going to demonstrate this weapon. I'm going to aim at a tree over there across the way. Hopefully, I'll hit it. We'll let you see it. It's like an operation.
एनिमी का भी ड्रेस दिखाने
This is an attack cell for the assault team. Now, the GI, our weapons, our small arms, were equivalent to what the GIs had. This rifle
had a 5-round magazine, internal magazine, fired a 7.7 millimeter round, and could fire anywhere from 15 to 30 rounds per minute. It was a very deadly weapon and a good weapon. We'll demonstrate it now. Yep. It doesn't like the blanks.
This is a Soviet-made SKS. Fires a 7.62 by 39 round. It's 40 inches long, weighs about 8.5 pounds, has an effective range of 440 yards. It's fed through an internal 10-round magazine.
Yes, that made the transition much easier and allowed for better supply chains. It was a myth that the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese did not have good supply chains. They were very well supplied by the Warsaw Pact countries. This weapon had some significant advantages over the SKS. It's automatic and fired up to 100 rounds a minute with a box magazine. It came standard with a 30-round box magazine where they could fire up to that 100 rounds a minute. But you could also attach a 100-round drum magazine. In the use of a drum magazine, it could fire up to 300 rounds per minute downrange.
Weighs 3.5 pounds. Is made of plastic. You'll notice that it has a concave surface. Inside of this plastic case is 1.5 pounds of plastic explosive. And embedded into that plastic explosive are 704 bolts. You could stick it in the ground. He would put it in the ground, front toward enemy. He would then take out of the bag a blasting cap, which is connected to an electrical wire, place the blasting cap into the mine. He would unspool the electrical, clap it 3 times. That would send an electrical current through the cable to ignite the blasting cap, which would then ignite the plastic explosive. And when this thing blows up, it's going to send those 700. So, versatile vehicle. It could be used as a headquarters. It could be used as an ambulance. It could be used as a weapons carrier or an infantry carrier. The model that we're laying out now is M106. This is a mortar carrier. It has a 4.2-inch mortar on the inside of it with a 6-man crew. 4.2-inch mortar is an incredible. Of course, you're going to see the detonation down on this side of the demonstration field.
गोला फायर करेगा उधर गिरा
So one thing about mortars is that they're designed to fire their shell in a high arcing. And now we brought out the pure M113. This is an armored personnel carrier. It has a 2-man crew, and it can carry a full squad of infantry. It has a fairly heavy weight, 25,000 compared to say a truck or a Jeep. It has a maximum road speed of 40 miles per hour, so this thing can move fast. It also has very good all-terrain capability. It is amphibious, so this thing can drive off into a river and swim across it at 3.5 miles per hour. As an armored vehicle, it's got 1.73 inches of aluminum armor. That means it's going to protect you against machine gun fire, shrapnel, small arms fire, but any kind of serious anti-tank weapon is going to go right through this. The NBA, the BC had very few anti-tank weapons, so this could be something of a terror to them. The only way that they could really deal with it was mines and booby traps, and mines in particular were dangerous because this thing has a very soft underbelly. If it rolls over a mine, that mine explodes. It's going to do enormous damage to the inside of the vehicle, wounding or killing everybody who's occupying that moving aluminum box. In order to give greater safety to the men inside the 113, the troops tried to put sandbags in the floor. That did help, but the extra weight overtaxed the transmission and burned it out. So that wasn't the solution. So what happened most of the time is nobody rode inside this thing except the... So now, RC-25, known as the Prick 25 by the grunts in Vietnam. This shows up in the late 60s and serves into the 70s. One of the things about the PRC-77 is this is the first full arms reach all the time. Of course, if we know how important he is, the enemy knows how important he is. And if he were to walk around in the jungle with that antenna up in the air all the time, he would basically be waving a great big red flag to our opponent saying, "Here I am, shoot me first." Because the first guy that the BC or the NBA want to kill is the radio man. The second guy they want to kill is me, because I'm the guy who uses the radio. And the third guy they want to kill is the M60 gunner, because he has most of the firepower. If they could knock out all three of us and disable that equipment, then our unit is going to be in very, very serious trouble. So he's going to keep that antenna down. He's going to keep the handset tucked inside his uniform. He's going to do everything he can to look like just another guy carrying a rifle. And by you'll remember is exploding pyrotechnics, moving armored vehicles with limited line of sight, and blank rounds that can in fact cause injury and kill at very close range. So please let me reiterate that for the duration of this demonstration, you guys need to stay where you're at. Stay in the bleachers. If the sound has bothered you, put your fingers in your ear, slightly open your mouth to equalize the concussion, and you will be just fine. When we're done, have a chance to come back and make a few closing remarks to you, but now is the time to get out the camera and take some really cool video or pictures.
कुछ नहीं लगेगा किसी को भी। आ रही है मतलब उनको छोड़ो, जान करो। ऐसा नज़ारा तो कभी नहीं मिलेगा। कर दिया था पकड़ लिया
This is Tango 6 actual. I have wounded, 4 wounded. Request immediate medevac. Over. Roger that. Tango, we hear you. We got medevac on the way.
नहीं एक्टिंग कर
Roger that. Look for green smoke. Green smoke. Over.
वो हैंड ग्रेनेड पता नहीं क्या है ये शायद हेल्प का है क्या ग्रीन कलर का वो कुछ स्मोक छोड़ते हैं ना ताकि नोटिस कर सके
Searching for papers.
आ गया ना उसमें एड आया है
Cease fire and fall in.
पहले इन्फॉर्म कर देते हैं सिंक में रहता है
Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw is a very thin slice of what the real thing would have been like. It would have lasted longer, it would have been louder, and at the end of it, all the participants would not have gotten up to stand in the same. It is a brutal, violent, vicious, bloody, ugly business. War in Vietnam was no different. But for the men who went to Vietnam and who came home from Vietnam, there was this distinction. Unlike in previous conflicts where our returning warriors were greeted as heroes, many of our Vietnam veterans were ignored or treated with outright hostility by a country that wanted to think about anything but the war in Vietnam. A country that went about its business as though there was no war in Vietnam. While the soldier dug his foxhole and slept in the dirt in his own sweat, the people back home enjoyed their air conditioning, went to the grocery store, went out to see a movie, or looked at a magazine and thought about buying the newest car. Or the soldiers risked their lives. People at home went about their business as though no one was risking their lives on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. Apathy, indifference, and sometimes hostility, incredibly cruel hostility, heaped upon soldiers who had done nothing except answer their country's call for service, just as their fathers and grandfathers had done in Korea and World War II and World War I. As Americans and a free people, it is our right to disagree with our government, to protest against it, to argue with it, to advocate for different policies. But what a lot of Americans did in the 1960s was to take their disagreement with the government's policy and inflict their anger on the men who were the instruments of that policy, to blame and degrade and humiliate the warrior for having simply done his duty. This is one of the stains on America's past. It is a stain that it took 30 years for our country collectively to try and remedy. And although that remedy was righteous and it was overdue, it could not make up for 30 years of the cruelty and the indifference. If there's one lesson that we seem to have learned from the way that we mistreated our Vietnam veterans, it was that even if we disagree with what the government is doing, we are not going to take that disagreement out on the warrior and the men and the women who wear our uniform. Monday is Memorial Day. It's the one day every year our country sets aside to remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. Veterans Day is about honoring all veterans. Those who died, those who survived, those in uniform, those who wore a uniform in the past. But Memorial Day is different. You can't wish somebody a happy Memorial Day because it's not a holiday. It's a commemoration. It's a remembrance. A commemoration and remembrance of the men and women who have laid down their lives for our freedoms. A lot of Americans think of Memorial Day as a 3-day holiday. No mail, no banks, mattress sales, ball games, sporting events, going out to the lake, having a picnic, getting together with friends and family. And in fact, there's nothing wrong with any of that. In fact, that's all good, because that is part of celebrating being an American. That is part of taking advantage of what we in this country have and so often forget to be thankful for. But our ability to spend a long Memorial Day weekend like that has been purchased for us. It's been purchased by those who gave their lives to protect this country and to keep it safe. So that for us, war is a reenactment. It's an hour on a Saturday afternoon, and not what war is for the people of Ukraine, for example. A relentless, unending day in and day out nightmare. The men and women who have made that possible for us are our veterans. And when we talk about our veterans, we refer to them as heroes, and rightly so. But in my career, I've had the opportunity to talk to thousands of veterans. And whenever I've used that phrase in reference to them, they have declined it to a man and woman. And they have always said, no, I'm not a hero. The heroes are my buddies who never came home. The ones who still sleep beneath the white crosses and stars of David and our national cemeteries abroad and overseas and here in the States. Monday is their day. And when we go about the wonderful things that we get to go about doing as Americans on Monday or today or tomorrow, all that those men and women would ever ask us to do is to stop and to pause for just a moment and to be grateful and to say a silent prayer and a silent thank you for what they laid down and what their families suffered so that we could live the good life that we live here in the United States. That's why we do this program, to remind ourselves what that holiday really means, to thank our Vietnam veterans for what they did for us. And if there are any Vietnam veterans in the audience, I would ask them to raise their hands. Do you have any? Well, let's give them a round of applause.